Welcome to Perspectives in Peds, or PIP for short, your go-to podcast for insights into paediatric practice. From clinical approaches and emerging research to the everyday wins and challenges, we bring you OT perspectives that inform, inspire and spark conversation. Welcome to PIP, Georgia, Mikayla.
Hello.
Hi. How are we
Hi.
doing today?
Well,
Good.
Good. Thank you for joining me. We are having a chat today about growing up with screens and finding what we call occupational balance as OTs for our kids that are navigating this world of screens being in every facet of their life pretty much as well. So we thought we'd kind of kick this off with a discussion around some of the questions we often get asked as OTs from parents and caregivers around what is the magic number for screen use? And I'm asking this as a bit of a hooky question, I guess, because, well, I'm going to let you answer actually.
There is no magic number. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There are lots of research articles and guidelines and things like that that are out there in the ether. You could probably find any number you're looking for if you search hard enough.
that's a really good point. Yeah.
But what we really like to focus on is the fact that the number that is too much is the number of hours that is impacting a person's occupational balance.
Yeah.
If someone can't do the things they need to do, the things they want to do, they are having functional impacts, they're not engaging in, daily functions, their screen time may be a reason for that, and that number is clearly too high.
Yeah.
In two kids, that could look completely different. And also I think it's really important, off the bat, to indicate the research is really neurotypical heavy. It has not considered neurodivergent brains very well at all.
Yeah.
And that is obviously the population that a lot of us as clinicians are working much more frequently with. Yeah. And there's probably a really big difference in how that looks for neurodivergent brains.
Yeah.
And we have really poor evidence for that too. So
Yeah. Well,
no
there's
magic number.
Yeah, there's lots of evidence, but it's also if you were a parent or caregiver kind of reading it with the lens of looking for a real definitive answer, you might find something.
Yeah.
But we as OTs are really passionate about really thinking about the individual, and we talked a little bit about when we're thinking about screen use, shifting away from hours or numbers and more thinking about I guess the quality and the context of how those screens are being used.
And that is so important, because if I look at my own screen use for the day, I spend a lot of it in front of a computer.
Yeah.
But then when I'm thinking about my own screen time, I wouldn't actually consider that as my screen time. It's more like the time I spend scrolling on TikTok or on Instagram, FaceTiming and things like that. So it's definitely dependent on what you're actually doing on the screen that makes a big difference. And it's, like Georgia said, it's so individualized.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so we thought this episode would be a really cool way for us to kind of unpack what we know about screen use and link that to occupational balance, I suppose. So we also thought it would be cool to talk about different age groups, because obviously we know for us here at Kid Link, we're working right through the years from, 0 or 1 to 18 years of age. So screen use is going to change significantly depending on those age brackets. But we thought we'd have a chat through some different age groups and what we know and what we think about that. So we'll start with our early years and thinking about our sort of pre-school 0 to 5-year-olds. So what do we know about screens, early development, how families might be using screens? What do we need to know when we're thinking about that occupational balance lens as well?
I think there was a bit of research out about balancing the nature of the screen use, whether it was passive or whether it was educational or whether it was social or active, things like that. So passive screen time being you're just watching with minimal engagement, maybe what we might colloquially call doom scrolling.
Yep.
Or just watching YouTube and just sitting there and not engaging in it.
Really high stimulating things too.
Yeah. So there was some evidence that reported that can have a passive can have a negative impact on a person's kind of engagement or development may result in some kind of delays and things like that.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about, and we'll probably talk more about this when we talk about our upper primary and teens as well, but what we're looking at is if a child is on screens, what is it pulling them away from in other elements of their life? And if we're thinking about those early years, what that looks like for engagement with caregivers in a really in a foundational period where their brain is just growing and developing so much.
Yeah, and like engagement in play is so important. And I think there was, I guess, some evidence showing that, if you're not engaging as much in play or conversations or exposed to different language between different people, then that's the problem. It's not necessarily the fact that it's the screens, that like you said, the displacement.
Yeah. So displacement is a word that we'll use often, and that is referring to that in summary, what they're being taken away from if they're on the screens as well.
And some studies have like linked a correlation between developmental delays with screens, but it's also really hard to identify, was it the screen use or is it the family dynamics?
Yeah, correlational causation, right?
Yeah, like what is it actually related to? It's really hard to pinpoint. Some of the evidence, though, actually a lot of it does say heavily, though, that screens impact sleep. That's one of the biggest things. But
that's
in terms of everything else,
the biggest like unanimous point.
Yeah.
And I think we've all lived that experience. We
Absolutely.
know that,
as adults.
we know that to be true for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. And if I sit here also as a parent, and I also speak to a lot of parents of young children around this as well, is that, again, like for me, I use screens with my sub 5-year-old children. I know. Because there's a lot of learning, educational type things that we will pop on the TV primarily for them. But also sometimes it makes me a better parent. If I have 20 minutes to just kind of regroup and regulate myself, and especially for me, that huge transition from one nap to no nap as well. I was like, ooh, like now I've got to fill extra hours in the day and I'm exhausted and I can feel myself fizzling by the end of the day if we've just been go, 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 go. So to use screens in a way that supports me to be a better and more present parent on the other side of that. And that's where I think parents will often come to at least OT and be like, you know, how do I get my 4-year-old off screens? And my question will usually be like, how do you use screens?
Yeah.
What does it mean for you as a family unit as well?
And that's so important because I think screens are so like demonized.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's like used as a reward as well, which again, if that fits the dynamics, great. But it is like this mentality that like you only get it if X, Y, and Z is happening. And there's so many benefits to screens.
Yeah.
I know my niece who's just over 1, like they put music videos on the TV and they dance together or she FaceTimes me, and all of those things like are really great. She's playing, dancing, doing
especially
all of that.
Like if we think about video chat, it's a growing thing. It wasn't really, I mean, the day that I was introduced to Skype, I was like, whoa, this is fancy. But now it's literally in our pockets whenever we want.
Yeah.
But I know that you don't live near your niece.
No.
So that's a really cool way for you to be able to connect and have face-to-face connection.
I think that's a really important point to make when we're talking about all of the different age groups that we're going to consider today, is the difference even between the three of us only being a couple years apart in age. Yeah. Like we're kind of equal age groups apart from each other. But the difference in how much screens, how much I was exposed to screens in my primary school versus secondary school versus you.
Yeah.
It's like the gap in a couple of years was massive. And there are so many parents right now, you know, in their 30s, in their 40s who may have had a laptop in year 11 or there might be younger parents who started using screens in, you know, primary school, and all of the, you know, parents who had never used a screen for their work. So they have really different everyone has really different personal values and personal experiences with screens. Obviously, everyone's got a smartphone now and things like that, but it has developed so rapidly that this is something that parents can't compare to their own childhood because it is not the same.
Yeah, it's a really good perspective.
And I think that's really important to like empathize with and take a bit of consideration for as well with parents. It's like they weren't growing up with the option of iPad versus TV versus, Skype versus FaceTime. All these things were not actually prevalent for most. Yeah. I don't want to exclude anyone, but for most parents that are working with that we're working with now. Yeah. And even therapists as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as well, like a couple of weeks ago, me and my partner and our kids were out for a coffee, and we had like search and find books on the table for the girls, and we were really interacting with each other on that. And an older woman did come over and make a comment about like, oh, it's so nice to see that you don't have a screen in front of your kids. And I actually said, like, it's really hard to not have a screen in front of your kids. And sometimes it's needed for our kids to be able to regulate and be present with their family and that kind of thing, to be able to go out in the community. So, again, we're really coming back to for early years, it really, we need to think about how those screens are being used, I guess, is key.
Yep.
And we're really looking for opportunity for interaction and connection and that
which
kind
you
of
can
thing
do
as
over a screen.
Absolutely, you can, 100%.
Yeah.
But then we sort of move into our primary school age kids, so sort of that 6 to 12. And again, like you said, George, I mean, I feel like even when I went to primary school, screens weren't really. I mean, maybe we did some computer games here
to go
and
to
there.
the ICT
lab.
lab.
To the computer lab, absolutely. But I'm sure that it's more and more prevalent for kids to be using screens in educational settings and that kind of thing. So, like, what do we think when we kind of think kids using screens at school, for example? Like, does that kind of get a bit of a free pass in terms of...
I don't think I've ever had a parent, when I ask how many hours is your kid using on the screen, I don't think I've ever had a parent acknowledge the hours or any portion of time that they spend maybe using it at school. I also don't think I hear about TV time or anything like that. I think I explicitly hear about like gaming consoles and iPads.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that just goes back to the point of it really just depends on what you're doing on the screen, because if you're learning, does it actually matter like what format you're doing it in? You're still learning. It's not taking you away from doing something else.
Yeah.
So I think screens in school, if it, helps with efficiency.
Yeah, it's not displacing
learning,
anything.
No,
right?
it's great.
Yeah. So are we thinking, like, I know that you guys looked at the evidence, but as we said, the evidence is it's a big wormhole to go down. But what do they say for this age group around, is screen time harmful, or is it simply just being overused, or what do we think?
There was an acknowledgement of screen time potentially impacting sleep again and impacting how people engage in their leisure activities. Again, it was all like if screen time is replacing play, reading, outdoor time and active play in particular. Living a more sedentary lifestyle can be a problem, especially in the early primary when you're developing your motor skills and your passions and interests and skills and strength and stamina. Yeah. Those are the things that can be impacted if we have an imbalance of screen time versus like other activities. Yeah. But that was probably like the biggest point, I think, for this demographic in particular. It's not exclusively bad or good. It's if it is out of balance, it can impact those development of those skills, those active skills.
We're going to sound a little repetitive, but yes, it's the imbalance, and that's probably where we see families coming in again around, they're not wanting to catch up with their friends after school because they want to do this on their iPad, or
they are catching up with their friends after school on the iPad.
Yeah.
The number of primary kids I have that are like, I'm on the call. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? You're on the call. Yeah. And there's half a dozen kids. Some of them are cousins. Some of them are kids who go to different schools. Like, they're all just sitting there chatting all afternoon.
And I think parents can sometimes find that hard, again, from their own personal experiences, to actually understand that is connection with their peers, and so they might see it in a negative light that they're just coming home and jumping on that game or whatever it might be. But that is a really fantastic opportunity for kids to connect.
I'll be really honest, I do have families come in, and a lot of the time transitioning off the iPad or off games is really tricky, and it does end up with lots of big feelings around that.
Yeah.
So I've had families who have goals around that, like reducing the time that they're on it so that they have more time to have a shower and eat dinner with the family and do those sort of things. But I wonder if they were doing something that they really liked that wasn't a screen, if the same thing would happen anyway.
Yeah, if the bedtime routine is less preferred than whatever they're doing, you know, maybe they're crafting or baking or whatever as well.
Yeah.
But yes, often just the signal of, hey, it's time to get ready for bed, if they're doing something that they really enjoy, likely would be a difficult transition as well.
I think that bedtime is an age-old problem.
Yeah.
You know, like
absolutely.
And brushing teeth, like I didn't want to brush my teeth, and I didn't have an iPad when I was 7. You know,
absolutely.
But it makes a lot of sense. I think that we talk about, particularly with some groups like ADHDers, for example, they're coming from a really high dopamine activity to a low dopamine activity. That can be a really hard transition outright, and we know that screens can give us a lot of dopamine. So that makes that transition really hard. But that doesn't mean that the screen is necessarily the problem. But it does mean we need to scaffold the way we're supporting them quite differently to make sure that they have enough support for the transition.
I have lots of families as well speak about when their children are on screens, they don't respond to them. Which is really interesting as well. And I think it just goes back to, what are they doing on the screen? Is it, again, more of that passive like screen use, active screen use? But the strategies we would discuss with the families anyway isn't just about stopping that screen time.
No.
If that is happening, it's about looking at their communication needs and like any other activity, like, well, what do they actually need in that moment, and how are we presenting them with the information? If I'm really engrossed in my phone and someone's speaking to me, I'll be like, what? Like, what did you say? Like, I'm not
And if
focusing.
we think like way back to our like attention episode, like we know that we actually can't really split our attention. And if our focus flashlight is really just zoned in on that one thing, sometimes it is incredibly difficult to pull it away to even your name being called as well. But I think it's really important when we're thinking about this age group as well, like balance and I suppose like structure is a really good way to kind of think about it around and having those conversations with your kids before they jump on that screen as well around what it's going to look like, how are we going to transition off, what are we going to do after, you know, maybe we're going to go outside and play on the trampoline after, or really trying to find that balance in still engaging in some of those really important like physical needs and things that help our body get ready for bed and all of those types of activities.
I think a really fantastic piece of advice I got out of a PD that we did with Game Aware, which is a really cool resource for clinicians and for families, is getting involved in what the child is doing on the screen so that you can set a realistic transition goal. For example, if it's a game with lots of levels and levels take about 10 minutes and your child's 3 minutes away from completing that level, obviously they're going to crack it when you say turn it off right now. But getting on board with them, being informed, understanding what they're doing and saying, all right, when you finish level 10, then it's off. And you know, maybe it's 5 p.m. or level 10, whichever comes first, whatever those kind of expectations are, but being really informed about what they're doing. If it's an open world game and you know that like they have to save it and it's going to take them 2 minutes to save it and then, you know, message their friends and say, I'm hopping off now and all that sort of stuff. Setting them up with that like pre-allocated in their transition essentially or setting them up for success in that way can be really, really beneficial, because often if we don't know what they're doing in their screens, it can be really hard for us to understand what it is about the transition that's hard. Like maybe it's like, if I do sign off now, all my friends are going to be able to steal all my things. I need to be able to pack them away in my bunker. Or I don't know much about games.
What game are you talking about?
Maybe Minecraft. I don't know. But like, you want to understand their world, understand their interests, the same as you want to understand why they're good at basketball, understand why they're good at anything else.
And also, like, we would take those things into consideration, like if your child was reading, like not just saying shut the book right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, hey, like you nearly finished that chapter. When you finish that, we're going to transition into dinner or something.
That chapter's too long. We're just going to finish at the bottom of the page. And maybe we can find a time tomorrow we can set up and do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that also opens up the opportunity to collaborate with the child. So, for example, if they're hopping off their iPad and every time they're really grumpy or irritable, if you know what they're doing in the game, that's going to help tell you what's happening. Like, are they losing every time they play?
Yep. Is it?
Are there chats going on within the game that are unhelpful? I know I had a client who's a bit older telling me the other day that she really likes playing this game, but more recently there's really unhelpful language and people essentially bullying each other on it. And she was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't like it. But I don't think it is meaning that she's going to reduce her screen time. She's just going to redirect it to something else.
Yeah.
So I think by, like what Georgia said, knowing what they're doing, it can help us understand when there are behavioural problems associated with screen use. It's like, well, why? Is it the game? I don't really think it's just going to be the screen itself.
The screen itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a good point to then make, which I definitely probably could do this a lot better as clinicians, to try and understand what the screen use looks like for that individual client better. Often I give that recommendation to families.
Yeah.
But then they'll be like, oh, I'm playing this game or I'm on this. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is, but okay.
Yeah.
Even like if a parent says they're on Roblox, like there are
it's huge.
Truly infinite games on Roblox, and they could be doing 1,000,001 completely different things. If you say Roblox, that means nothing.
Yeah.
That means
to actually
it could
unpack
be
it
some
for that
like
child.
shonky game that someone's built. It could be like the most popular and well-built game that everyone plays on a server. It could be like a completely offline game. Like
Absolutely.
You don't know what your kid's doing if you know that they're on Roblox.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. It's like super hard to work with them if you don't know what is going on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We then see that shift into the teen years, where often that brings screen use and social media becomes probably one of the core uses of screens, I suppose, for a lot of our teens. What do we know about social media specifically, and perhaps mental health as well?
From my understanding, there is evidence showing that social media is linked to mental health challenges like depression and anxiety and things like that. Not necessarily the screen, it's social media.
Yes. Yeah. Again, so it's less about the screen use, but what is being used for.
Which I think tying into like collaborating with kids now when they're younger about what they're doing on screens and if they are, like we said, having big feelings around it, supporting them to be aware of that. I would hope that then as kids get older, they're building the skills to be able to identify that, oh, every time I sit on Instagram for an hour, when I finish, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
So they can make informed choices about how they're using social media.
Especially when social media platforms like TikTok, for example, like it's such micro doses of like 15, 30, 45-second videos that honestly, I mean, I myself don't realize how much time passes in that. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I could have been reading that book that I'm really enjoying instead of doing this. Or I really wanted to prep my breakfast for tomorrow. That opportunity's gone. So again, when we get like when our, I guess, occupational imbalance becomes a problem, that's often where we're looking at, okay, what can we do about this teen or young adults' screen use as well?
I think it's really important to emphasize, like you were saying, it's not the teens' fault that they are having a hard time turning phones off and switching off. Like the TikTok algorithm doesn't have a bottom and a top. Like I remember when Instagram, you used to get to the bottom, it's like, you're all done.
Yeah.
And then I would turn off my Instagram.
Yeah.
Like that was when I was a teenager. That was kind of the way it worked. And now you can't even get to the bottom. You also can't find your friends' content without getting through ads and things like that. There's
ads and reels, and
phones are designed to keep us on them because they're only selling us ads when we're on them and looking at them. So I think really approaching with compassion is super important. Collaborating with a teen about like when do they feel like there are positives and when do they feel like it's negatives, and supporting their self-awareness of that is super, super important as well, because the same as any other goal that I'd ever recommend, we need to be collaborating with the client, collaborating with the kid, because it might be the case that, you know, their best friends are actually their netball friends and they don't go to the same school. And if they don't get to like have an hour in the group chat with their netball friends, they actually don't fill up their social cup.
Yeah, the connection
and they
isn't
don't
there.
feel connected, and they so we don't want to say like it's this many minutes on the phone and then you'll be good. Like
and it's like I'll send videos to you guys on TikTok.
And then we have a great TikTok group chat.
But we'll chat about it the next day.
We laugh about it the next day.
It's social connectedness. I was thinking of you and oh my gosh, this thing reminded me of you. I've got friends who live overseas and we keep in best contact because we're like, oh my gosh, this TikTok, like whatever, this video, this thing.
So when we're thinking about that, like how can we kind of differentiate, I guess, like helpful screen use versus harmful screen use for our teens in particular?
I really think it is like building self-awareness of what things make you feel good, because like, for example, I know if I sit and read for an hour or go for a walk outside for an hour, I feel so much better than sitting on my phone on TikTok for an hour. But sitting on TikTok in that hour feels good while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So it's reflecting on how you're feeling after as well.
I'd also like to point out the transition to like physically get up and do those things is sometimes a huge barrier as well. Like if you're already sitting down, your phone's there. It's so much easier to do that. But I completely agree. Like once I transition, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did this.
Yeah. Yep.
I think as well, and this is another one I got out of the PD we did with Game Aware, but I think it's a larger like psychological model, is the self-determination theory.
Yeah, love it.
Which kind of states that we need to be fulfilled in like feeling competent or feeling good at something, feeling related to other people, connectedness, and feeling autonomy, which is like the single most biggest developmental milestone for teenagers is becoming more and more autonomous and being the leaders of their life.
Control my life.
When a screen time is an issue, or when social media use is an issue, is when those three things are only being answered by being online or being on a screen. And so if we're trying to support them to maybe use their screens differently or less, or we're feeling like we want to help them modify the way they're using screens, we can't take away from the only thing they have autonomy over without filling it up with something else that they might have autonomy with. So an example of that is, you know, if they're feeling autonomous because they're playing a game where they get to like choose and create and make, where can we give them an opportunity to choose and create and make in real life?
I really like that perspective. That's really
so
awesome.
how we can't take away without giving back. All humans need to feel good at things, need to feel connected, and need to feel autonomous. And so if school sucks, they don't have many friends, they find it really hard, they don't have a hobby, they don't like sport, like whatever it is, why would we expect them to not use screens to access that?
Yeah. So if we're thinking broadly, because we know we're speaking to clinicians here, in summary, what's our role? Where do we sit when we're supporting families?
Just a little question.
And I guess, I know we're speaking to clinicians broadly, but we did also state that our lens as OTs is really looking at the occupational balance here. So what do you see as your role here?
My role for any client is to support them in things that they want to do, need to do, and have to do, and have a balance of that. And whether it's screens or something else that's impacting that, that's what we're going to collaborate on. So I think it would be supporting the child or the family, or probably both actually, to build awareness of how they're using their screens, and if it's taking from something, not just stopping it, but finding ways and strategies that they can use to still enable them to participate in other activities.
Yeah.
I think I wholeheartedly agree. I'd only add the additional role that we can play as clinicians is to bridge the gap between parents' knowledge and child's experience.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's going to be a massive thing. So all of the education that we can provide parents about, it's not all bad or all good or there is no perfect number. All that education that we can give parents and putting them on the same team as their kid, because it's often the case. Like, this is probably one of the biggest areas where it's perceived the most as child v parent.
Yeah.
Which we obviously don't want.
Yeah.
The parents are trying to support their kids and the kids are trying to live their life.
Yeah.
So we want to put them on the same team by giving everyone as much education as we can, and that's by accessing the research and the data, but also breaking it down to the functional.
Yeah, and really supporting families to understand that, like, the screen itself is not harmful.
Yeah.
If we're just looking at it in isolation.
A literal piece of material object is not the problem.
It's what you're doing on it.
It's what you're doing on it.
Absolutely. So if I was to say to you then, as a little bit of a wrap up, like a one-liner, like what can we sort of say is our perspective here for screen use for our kids and teens?
That's such a good question.
Stump me, Katie. I'm not usually lost for words.
I would like clinicians and parents to understand that exactly what you just said, like, screens are not the issue. The way we're using them can be an issue.
Yeah.
There is evidence to support most claims out there, but we need to take it down to the individual person sitting in front of us and whether that issue is actually relevant to them or not.
Yeah, if it's replacing things that are really important to them or meaningful to them as well.
Perhaps work with, not for.
Yep, love that.
Yeah.
Good one. All right. Well, thank you. I've
Thanks.
enjoyed this chat.
Yeah.
We'll pop some links in the show notes to Game Aware in particular. Like we said, we were lucky enough to do a bit of a team-based learning opportunity with them, but they do offer on-demand courses for parents and clinicians, I believe. As well.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you guys next
Thanks,
time.
Katie.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.